I'm going to start by showing you, as promised, my cow beat. So for those of you who are not aware, the first beat challenge, the theme was having access to these cow samples, and everyone had to make a beat out of those samples. Switchy time. So I'll play you guys the cow beat I made. There's been like some excellent beats in the first challenge, so I had a lot of pressure. I think the overall level was crazy good. So I did my own thing. Here we got like some lovely cow action going on, you know? So I'll get into like specifically what samples I used for the beat, but this is what I used to make all of what you're gonna hear right now. So let's play it. So there you have it. This one was very fun to make. It was quite a challenge. Like I started this one on stream right after the beat challenge, and I was struggling to like sort of try to come up with as many patches as possible. Some I removed, some I redid, and I ended up like making a lot more than what started on stream. So this is a cow lead, which I pretty much it's very similar to how I usually tackle leads. Basically anything, you know, if you apply vibrato to anything and that the mod wheel controls that, it's really surprising like how many sources you can actually use to make a lead. Like, cause sustain with the loop note is like a cool sound, but I played the lick once again, second time on screen. So this is a sample, reduced it to like a smaller portion of the sample. Loop, so loop for sustain usually have many options, whether like you play the sample as is, looping like it just repeats the sample. I usually prefer the one that it plays it and then it reverses, and then you have that loop like where it repeats it over and over. Then filter, which is where it gets interesting. So it's a filter envelope, very short attack, medium decay. And when you go into low register, like it's already pretty interesting. So I kind of applied the same idea for the bass afterwards. And then routing and modulation is where I'm actually like able to get the vibrato thing going on. And then this runs through the EQ, because I made this into a lead, and I had the filter action going on. I had to like really boost like the high mids to sort of get it to get through and pierce like through the mix. I got a short reverb, and I'm using like a bit of saturation through Saturn. And this is the lead. And basically for any leads that double, I basically duplicated this patch but ran it through like more reverb for like these little double lines to get like the higher register, and I don't know, make it feel a little bit more full. Simpler changed my life. It really changed mine too. It's so versatile, and when you bring it into like the more advanced version, the sampler, you get even more tools, which is really cool. Spread is pretty cool. Like it's very similar to what Unison does, so it creates like a slightly altered pitch multiple times of the initial sample and spreads it out. So it's very similar to a chorus or Unison, you know. Okay, the bass. Like it's a pretty solid sub. Or it might actually be the same as the lead. And then made like a short envelope on it to make it shorter. And make it like into more of a plucky kind of bass. The thing is like it works in this register and I'm filtering it out, but as soon as you go up, the loop of the sample kind of starts getting weird. So it works here because like you hear it at some point, but the way I was using it, I didn't have like that many really long sustain notes, so it worked out, you know, just okay. The kick and one of the rims and both rims are the cow sample, and the bird noises too. This is what I use for like ambience in the background. So noise layer. It's like just some background noise, but it kind of feels like rain, which is pretty crazy. I use a frequency shifter to adjust the tone to my liking. Saturation on a kick, of course, drum bus. If anyone uses Ableton, I think all of you are familiar with the drum bus, and like it just works miracles. Like there's a drive unit in it, a crunch unit. The boom is super useful, but even without the boom, it already sounds pretty good. So I just added like a bit of oomph around the 70 hertz range. A little bit of transient shaping as well. So, okay, this is with the sustain. So it's a cow sample, but that's like hella pitch down. So, and there's a pitch envelope as well. So this is the cow sample. Then with pitch envelope, it creates like a click. Pitch envelope is a super useful tool for anything that you want to be percussive. The more you put it, the more accentuated the click sound will be. So I'm using a bit of that, but then bringing it like way down and then removing that sustain. And let's see what it sounds like without the drum bus. So the drum bus, the transient shaper is like keeping the transient and removing the junk afterwards. And then the boom is like re-adding a little bit of that length through the 70 hertz range. And there you have it. And I think for the rim, it's actually the same idea. I ended up with like a more like wooden sound, if that makes sense, which is pretty crazy. So wait, let me with the sustain. Without the... So again, the click or like percussive attack is from the pitch envelope. So without it, it's a cow. With it, you get like the super quick click, and like let's say I put it slower, it's not really a click anymore. If I put it shorted, the shorter it is, the more you lose it. So I felt like this was a good value. And then sustain. So it just like it becomes like a sort of, I don't know, wooden short thing, a bit of saturation, and then the spring reverb. And then I have a second version that has more pitch envelope. It's a little bit higher in pitch, and I doubled it with like a super saturated version of the sample and the initial one. So like this is like the main rim, and this is like the filler rim. This huge reverb hit. Got this one. All these slightly different versions of the hat. It's just a hat, but like with different attack values, different pitch values, and then all of this together, like you know, just some layering. Like it's not the craziest percussion I've ever made, because like the nature of the sample, like kind of like there's some sounds I couldn't reach for, but obviously I'm sure some people would have been able to do some crazy stuff with those too. But yeah, that's it for percussion. Glue compressor, I use it usually a lot, but I think you must have said it like around the kick or snare part probably. With the drum bus, I basically already have what I need. Like there's a compression like that's integrated in it with the soft saturation and the transient shaping. Like I have all the punch I already need. So the glue compressor on top of it wasn't really necessary. Is processing approach the same for your AD kit drums? Yeah, I guess so. Like I use a lot of saturation, and I love like plate and spring reverbs. And I always do like a lot of EQing. As far as like the pitch envelope goes, that's something I use like less often when the material or like the initial sample is like of an acoustic instrument or percussion instrument, you know? So I kind of use that less often, but for addictive, I'll get into it. Like I'll open maybe like the project from last stream. I use there's like the tone designer, so you can like create an envelope for the tone or like timbre, so like you can start bright and finish lower, or like the formants, if you will, as well, which is pretty nice too. But just envelopes in general, whether it's assigned to the pitch, to the timbre, to the I said pitch already, right? But to basically the filter, anything, any parameter you can imagine, envelopes are one of the most important tools, whether it's for percussion or synthesized percussion or just synth patches in general. Like it's, pretty much at the fundamental of that whole process, whatever you end up using. Like anytime I work with another producer, you always see like, you get to see how someone uses tools like in a way that you might not have thought of, which is really crazy. And you learn so much that way. And like every once in a while I get a new tool, or like I rediscover a tool that's already been made available to me, and I just find a new twisted way to approach it. Have you ever tried Maschine? Yeah, so I was actually on Maschine before switching to Ableton. I was using Maschine in Logic, and then when I started with Ableton, I was using Maschine in Ableton. I liked it. I like switched to just a drum rack workflow because it was way less CPU intensive, because it's made for Ableton. I just organized my folders through the built-in features, and it kind of worked out for me. And I eventually got to Push, which kind of replaced that workflow for me personally. But I really like Maschine. Someone was asking about granular synthesis, so I'll just get into that. So I loaded this Rode sample in it. So I'll choose like a position, and then it'll like separate the portion that you've selected like into multiple smaller samples. It puts them together and plays them like in either in a random order or in a straight order. And then obviously you still have like tools like a filter. Like this is already pretty interesting. I'd usually like maybe I hope that answered your question. I don't know if it was the best answer. Hey Anomalie, been a long time in your music and have learned a couple of your songs. After learning the basics of Ableton, what in your perspective should I prioritize learning in order to transfer my ideas to actual music? Keep up to the could work. I guess it depends on if you've already had some experience with production or not. If you're completely new to it, I would recommend obviously watching some tutorials on YouTube. There's a bunch. I really recommend the tutorials of both Mr. Bill and Andrew Huang. I think they're like the main references. And then my philosophy as far as this goes is work with like a very small number of tools, whether like that's hardware units or effects in a DAW. So like, I don't know, one synth, a couple drum samples, an EQ, and maybe some reverb. And then like do a bunch of ideas with those and limit yourself to only using those effects or tools that you determined, and try to explore like all the textures or ideas that you can get out of them, so that once you've done like 10, 15, 20, you're like pretty much a master of like the options of those effects, or at least like a master of how they resonate with you. And then you can add in like a new chorus or a new effect like a flanger. Compression is something that's usually a bit more complicated to understand when you're just getting started. I don't know what it is for you. But like you can definitely watch some videos and read on that as well, and try to experiment with different settings. And then like anytime you get a new piece of gear or a new effect or something, you're already like super comfortable with all the tools that you're currently using. So you're just adding something else. And then you're not just thrown into like 1,000 options at once. You're already like super masterful in what you already have. You know how to experiment with those. And then you go step by step. At least that's how I just approach stuff. And it's something I really recommend to get started, or even if you're a veteran and you're trying to get started with a new unit, like messing with every single knob and seeing how it affects your sound, and back and forth and stuff like that. So I have this whole thing here, and my kicks the kicks and the snare are routed like into these separate channels so that I can treat them separately in Ableton. So like the snare, I don't know, I EQ, like I brought some low mids up, I removed some highs, I saturated it. This is my like Hass effect. It's an amazing rack by Slink to like create some width, very similar to like what the Ozone Imager does, but with almost like no CPU consumption and no phase. So when you convert it to mono, it's like extremely close to what it is in stereo as well. And then I always have like this frequency shifter ready to, you know, it's like seriously my favorite effect in Ableton because you preserve like the information in the highs of the initial sample, but you can just shift, you know, the what you receive as a pitch. On melodic instruments, it kind of feels weird, but that can be something that you go for. And then I stack this with a drum rack, which is how I do like this coloring. So I don't know, like I spent quite some time just getting this set up, but then this is the preset that I always load whatever kit I'm using or sample, and then I can drop some samples through the drum rack on top of the Addictive Drums unit. So it's very fun to play on the push because, as you guys have seen in every stream, I really like finger drumming. So this is usually how I go about it. Yeah, filtered like way down, but then I bring up some high information back through like the tape unit here through the drive. I use like this is like another type of like distortion or saturation to air pressure that they also have in the RC20. And I was just focusing like on the low mids to get some harmonics out of that. I don't have like a real answer as like why I did that. I just messed around. It eventually sounded good. Could you talk a bit about your approach on piano voicings? Yes. Yeah, so I'm very much about, as I've said multiple times, I prioritize voice leading and bass movement, whatever is going on. Inversions is a tool that is like absolutely huge. You can like create a huge sense of movement without actually using like a huge amount of chords, right? So let's take like, this is C major 7 or 9 or whatever. Like this is all the same chord, right? And so it was just, there's so much territory that you can cover strictly by staying on this chord and exploring inversions. And then let's say we just add one chord. So this is, I think, something I went over in the master classes back when we were actually touring. Let's say we add like a second chord to this. So like D minor. It's all still two chords, you know? We're very much in C major and diatonically going through the scale. Let's say we remove D and do like D flat major instead. This is all still two chords, right? So inversions, a hell of a powerful tool that I use a lot in almost every song. Just approaches in general. I've really abused the tritone substitution. So this is, for those of you who are not familiar, it's like replacing the 5 and the 5-1 movement by the dominant tritone sub. So let's say when we're in E flat minor and you want to do 5-1. Inversions, well, technically in the right hand, but the bass movement was the same. Just like through different chord qualities on the 5, there's like a lot of that you can explore. So This is the just dominant. You could do altered, whether it's the 9 or the 5. The 9. That's all 5-1, right? Tritone substitution. If we're in E flat, it will mean E. And this one, I like, I've tried to sort of like get a little bit away from, because I exploited it way too much in the first EP, a little bit in the second as well. I guess I went like more model in songs like Notre Dame Est. But like velour. So this is tritone that goes to 4, tritone that goes back to 1, tritone that goes to 6. So it's really everywhere. In Bleury. So the first one, this is tritone to go to 6. So that one, if you just like get target chords and you do a tritone substitution approach to every chord, you get, that's the Anomalie sound from the first EP pretty much. So yeah, I guess there's a bunch of other substitutions that I use, but through like these two alone, just the inversions and different qualities like of a same chord, right? Through different extensions, there's like so many sonic options that you already have. And then of course you can head like into modulation, like getting like a little bubble of like another key for like one bar and then dive back in to your initial key. That's always very powerful as well. But you know, it's always target chord and then what you can do to get there. There's so many options. Hope that kind of answers your questions, and we can always do another stream like this where we get into whatever you guys want to see. See you in the next one. Take care. Bye bye.